directed by Nicholas Wendell and Danny Abraham, who also co-wrote the movie. We are talking Stupid Games, and this is a 2024 low budget, around $10,000 budget horror movie, obviously set around a board game. I say obviously, I have to be honest, I was actually a little bit hesitant to watch this movie because of the title, because if I'm honest, it sounds like a Hunger Games parody, and when I saw the title, I didn't even want to bother clicking on it, I must say. However, I've ended up watching it clearly because you're watching a review, and it isn't a Hunger Games parody. What it is a low-budget, character-driven horror movie. And the story focuses on 6 people, 3 girls, 3 guys. And the girls are putting together a dinner party to host 3 guys. And the girls are kind of friends. And one of the girls has met one of the guys before on a kind of a night out. And she's invited him along with 2 other guys to effectively match as a kind of blind date to her 2 friends. But these girls have got a little bit extra planned, as they are amateur witches, I guess, and are wanting to perform some type of ritual, which is unbeknownst to the guys. They don't know anything about it. So we have these 2 guys, and they're meant to meet a 3rd guy, but the 3rd guy pulls out. So they just run into this kind of like nerdy maintenance man, and he ends up being the 3rd man for their team. So they don't really know him. They just bring him along as the 3rd member because they are told there must be 3 of them. So we end up with these 6 people in this apartment, and you know, they have dinner. Strange stuff starts to happen pretty early on, it has to say, and then the girls want to play a board game. So they have a sort of particular kind of game in mind, and as the kind of the game is played, various truths are revealed, but the supernatural stuff starts to ramp up. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So of course there have been horror movies based on game style products before. Recently we've had Tarot. I know that's not especially a kind of game, but necessarily it's similar. And we've also had obviously the Ouija games as well. So it kind of is a lower budget version of that. Now, let's talk about what I think works in this movie, and let's keep it in the context. This is a low budget movie, so we have to judge it. So I will say, I think the budget is used wisely here. It's about 80% of it, one location, this kind of, this apartment. And they've obviously done this to keep shooting costs at a minimum, but I think it works well in context of the story. We get a few external shots and other locations as the sort of setup happens. But I think the budget here is used wisely. We don't have lots of extras. We don't have big expansive shots. It's all, or the majority of the movie at least, is focused on this one location. But it makes sense in context of the story. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is I actually had to ask the director if I was reading too much into something, because I found this movie have some surprisingly sophisticated themes in what otherwise some might consider a throwaway Tubi style movie, or you know, straight to kind of streaming movie. Now this, as I mentioned, is somewhat of a character based movie, but what I actually found was this actually has some sort of subtle commentary on gender roles. And now that might kind of like, make your eyes roll, but hear me out, and I'll kind of explain what I mean. Now, I wasn't sure. It's quite subtle, so much so that I'm thinking, am I reading into this? Am I watching this movie, kind of giving this movie credit, where I'm just kind of reading things in it? So I actually emailed the director without showing my hand about what I was talking about, to just ask if that was an idea. And he actually, Nicholas Wendell, did confirm that was actually part of the thought process whilst making this movie. In actual fact, some of this stuff was dialed back. So let me tell you what I mean, that I thought was quite good. I think this movie is demonstrating differences between women and men, or at least some men and some women. So let me give you an example. The girls have set up quite an elaborate game and series of events to try and manipulate these men into doing ultimately what they want. But the men don't act like the women think they are going to, and as such kind of make a little bit of a mess of their plans, because they don't act like these women are expecting and how they've kind of planned it out, because they're not women. They're guys and they act differently. And the other thing that I thought was quite interesting as well was the differences between these friendships between this group of men and this group of women. Now, for example, one of the things, again, I'm going to sort of roll something else in that I quite liked here. When you watch this, we have these three guys, and two of which are kind of acted like they're kind of these sort of like dude bros types. You know, these kind of like some would consider traditional bully roles, right? But when they're acting with this other guy who is this more nerdy sort of like Poindexter sort of style character, they never bully him. They're a little bit of like ribbing each other, but they do it with the other two as well. So all three of them are kind of like sort of ribbing each other, but they never actually like bully the kind of like the nerdy guy. In actual fact, one of them kind of goes out and tries to find him when he's sort of lost in this sort of like apartment building. So it kind of has that sort of, I mean, they didn't know this third guy really, but they just kind of have this sort of bond, maybe more of a bond where it's not particularly deep, but they kind of are very much all on the same page pretty quick. You have these guys that are your more kind of jock style characters, but they don't bully this other guy who's a little bit nerdy. In actual fact, I think they actually try and include him in the group quite a lot. And I thought this was a really like unstereotypical way of having characters that are kind of coded to be stereotypical characters. Like we got these two sort of jock characters or dude bro characters, and you just think they're going to be an ass to this kind of other guy. And you know, there's, like I said, there's a little bit of like back and forth. They do it with each other as well. So that wasn't really the case, but you think it's going to be. So I kind of quite like that. And then we have these three women characters, and they all know each other. They're a little bit bitchy to one another and a little bit kind of sniping, and you know, you kind of feel their relationship is, they've known each other longer and stuff, but they're kind of at odds with one another to a certain degree. So it has that sort of dichotomy between these sort of two groups of people that are separated by gender. And in actual fact, when they have this kind of game, they actually separate into male and female teams. So I just thought it was quite subtle writing here, and something that I actually watched a couple of other reviews before I did one, which is not normally something I would do, because I wanted to see if anyone else had picked up. They didn't. So you know, I wondered. That's why I emailed the director. I think, is this me? You know, is this me just kind of reading into things here? But apparently no. But I kind of quite liked the. What, you know, ultimately could have been stereotypical characters to have actually some interesting things to say. So that being said, I kind of quite like these characters. I thought they were kind of quite well drawn, even though, you know, they do sometimes lead into some stereotypical stuff. It's balanced with nuance from other areas. So you can have, you know, guys and girls kind of acting in a certain way, but they'll kind of surprise you as well. That I kind of quite liked. So the character-wise, I dug it. I liked it. The acting is a little bit sort of over the top at times, I have to say, but when you're having a movie which is 80% in a room or in an apartment, I think you have to try and find a way to up the dramatic sense to a certain degree. So even though I wouldn't say this is necessarily the most realistic acting I've ever seen, I think it works in context of the movie and the fact that we have slight sort of exaggerated performances. It makes it more interesting to watch when ultimately the bulk of the film is 6 people sitting around a table. So I kind of quite like that. It's not to the point where it's comical or anything like that, but it's just enough where I think, you know, okay, it's not Oscar-worthy acting, but it works in the context of the film, and actually it helps the selling the kind of the dramatic elements to this. Now, apparently they actually made this game from scratch, and you know, it's kind of like a truth or dare style sort of game. And as the film goes on, we see more kind of supernatural stuff kind of carrying on, but we also get the kind of the truths are revealed, and there's a little bit of, again, a little bit of nuance in regards to sort of character reveals and a bit of backstory for them and stuff, which again I thought was quite good. The budget is obviously low, and I think they've done a fair job with kind of giving you some visual representations of some kind of horror imagery here, without kind of going you know, too over the top or anything like that. And the other thing I kind of quite like, this is going to go back to the characters. I mean, to me, characters are such a big thing, you know. These guys who only one of them barely knows one of the other girls, but they're all there thinking they're going to get lucky. And these girls are starting to act weird, and as the film goes on, before they've really cottoned on that there's something supernatural going on, they're just thinking, there's something's weird going on here. But they're so concerned about, you know, having a game of find the sausage, they don't really care, so they just kind of like accept it and just like, put it to, you know, let's just kind of like ignore this kind of crazy stuff that's going on, because they just kind of want to get ultimately into these kind of girls' pants. So, but as the film goes on, it's that like the building of, hang on, we really do have to kind of like acknowledge that something's kind of going on. And I just thought, again, I kind of quite like those sort of character moments here. So that to me was pretty good. Overall, again, I think the movie story-wise makes use of the budget here. We do see a little bit on screen, but I think it works well in working in the constraints that such a low budget would give a movie to still make it an interesting kind of story. What doesn't work for me, despite some good work done on the character stuff, I do feel the story's narrative is a little bit questionable in regards to some of the things that are happening on screen. Like, I didn't really understand what these women were trying to do, what the point of them having this kind of like magical ritual, what they were hoping to gain from it. It didn't really sort of come across, that was kind of particularly apparent. It didn't really come across of what it is they're trying to do with these guys. I mean, were they trying to sacrifice them? Do they just need to be involved? I didn't really get what the actual kind of the moving parts of their plan was. We know that they're doing something, and it involves this kind of these guys turning up, but I didn't know what the mechanics of it were, or were supposed to be, because things ultimately go wrong, and what the end result they were hoping for was. So that kind of like, to me, was a little bit lacking in regards to kind of the story here. Visually speaking, as I say, there's a few kind of horror elements on display, but it never really goes into a movie that is scary or gory. This is more of a kind of an interesting sort of story outside of the kind of the few elements I've described. But it's not a particularly kind of scary movie. Maybe it's budget constraints, and like I said, there are deaths in this movie, and it's, you know, they're relatively kind of on the mild side. Let me just kind of put it like that. And then finally, I would say I thought the ending was rather abrupt. I never really felt like we got to see the end of the game. And then we have this kind of extra scene at the end, this epilogue. And I didn't really think it made 100% sense. I kind of understand what they were trying to do with it, and it's kind of a little bit of a gag. But to me, narratively, I felt we kind of didn't see the end of the game, and then we kind of had this little tag, which I don't know. I don't know if it really worked narratively, to be honest. And then outside of that, it is obviously a low budget movie. It has that low budget feel to it. I think they've worked well in the constraints that they've obviously clearly got here. But, you know, there it is. And obviously, I have to say, I think the title of this movie is not doing it, in my opinion, doesn't do it any favours. It apparently was #1 on Tubi, so maybe that's just me. Overall, how to kind of rate this movie, I have to say I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed the characters. The story was fine. I don't think it was particularly special, but it worked well in the constraints of the budget. I am going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.